What's up, beautiful people? It's your favorite light M Boogie in this thing. Welcome to another episode of the Can't Be Broken podcast, where we are shining light on the darkness of domestic violence and abuse. Welcome to the show. If you've never been here before, we got 3 simple goals: to educate, empower, and encourage. We are here to educate anyone who has never been in an abusive relationship, doesn't understand abusive relationships, and why the heck people stay or keep going back to an abusive relationship. We are here to empower all of our survivors to stand up and share your story without shame, fear, guilt, or judgment, because you are strong, you are powerful, and your voice deserves to be heard. And to anyone who is currently suffering in silence, listen, you are not alone. You are not crazy. Abuse is not normal. And despite how it may look and feel in this very moment, there is always a way out, and we encourage you with all of our hearts to seek support. Now, y'all know we got to go ahead and hop up in this thing, because we about to rise above our insecurities, release the burdens of shame and guilt, and revive our God-given power, purpose, and passion the confidence way, because we about to light it up. Welcome to another amazing episode. I am so privileged to say that this is episode number 28 this year for the Can't Be Broken podcast, formerly known as the Conf1dence Way podcast, if you're a little confused. I changed it to the Can't Be Broken podcast because it's a lot of things that are about to come out of this podcast that I'm super excited to get involved with. I just don't know when it's going to happen and what exactly it's going to be, how it's going to look, but just know this: it's going to be phenomenal. And in case you're wondering, I am your guest for the evening, for the morning, for the night, for the day, for the afternoon, whatever time you are watching this. It is a privilege to be in your presence. I thank you for always tuning in. And if you know anyone who is in an abusive relationship, or you suspect them to be in an abusive relationship, number one, talk to them lovingly about it. Don't make them feel bad, because if you make them feel bad, they're just going to continue to hide and lie about it. 2, direct them to help. You can easily call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. And lastly, just slip them this podcast. Send them a little link. Let them see that there have been situations across many different ages, many different races, many different genres, countries. It's all over the world, and it's not being talked about enough. It's been kept on the hush hush, and the people who are doing the abusing, they've been either hiding, being hidden by their family, all sorts of craziness, right? Like, they get off the hook for a lot of things. But you know what's more important? The people who have been abused often let them off the hook. I was watching this TikTok series, and this young lady was in an abusive relationship. I don't know if the young man had ever put his hands on her. These kids looked like they were teenagers, early 20s. And she had picked him up. She went to his cousin's house, hung out for a birthday party. He was getting off work. So she said, yeah, I'll come pick you up. I'll leave. So she left early, went to go pick him up. And he got an attitude about something. As they're driving home, he gets out the car and he has a gun. He gets out the car and she's driving, and he throws her phone out the window. The words are exchanged, negative energy is exchanged, and he pops some off in the air, I guess to frighten the young lady. But she just kept on. She's like, get in the car. Let's just go home. This is ridiculous. Well, and it's caught on a Ring camera, which is the only reason that there is proof about this. As she's driving, he decides to put the gun in the window and take fire. And when he does that, 2 bullets hit her in the hip, I think, in the shoulder, and immediately she is paralyzed. She loses control of the car because she has no feeling in her feet. She crashes into another vehicle, and she's asking him, as she's laying on the horn, to come help her. Come help me. This is not a joke. He doesn't come immediately to help her. He's more concerned about a phone. Eventually, she gets him to call 911. 911 shows up on the scene, and they take her away, asking her if she wants him to ride with her. And she says, no, I don't. He's the one that did this to me. Fast forward to her going to court. She's now in a wheelchair. Fast forward to her going to court. The judge sentences him, I think, to 8 years or something like that. And she actually asks the judge, he just needs to be taught some things, he doesn't have to stay in that long. And so the sentence was reduced. And it's just mind-blowing to me, because when we're in a situation where we allow someone to manipulate and control our behavior, to manipulate and control our minds, we are thinking from a warped train of thought. And I can speak personally on this, because even though I knew I didn't deserve what was happening to me, even though I knew it was wrong, I was still considering his feelings. I was still considering how his actions and me informing anyone of his actions, how that was going to impact his life. Homeboy had already been to jail once for abuse. And he came out. I met him long after that. And he told me some things, but he didn't share everything. And so here I am thinking, well, he seems to have changed. He's taking anger management classes. He seems really nice. He's not, aggressive or anything. So perhaps he has changed. Let me tell you something. People can change. A lot of people don't, depend on the situation, but they can change. But one thing you need to know, it is not your responsibility to give somebody else a second chance. That is not your burden to bear. It is not. And a third chance and a fourth chance. So I found myself in the situation, and I'm like, man, I gotten so close one night to calling 911. I had it dialed. All I had to do was press send. And when I got to that place, I couldn't press send, because all I was thinking about is, wow, he just got reconnected with his two older kids that he had from the previous marriage. He hadn't seen them in years. Now he is able to have visitation with them. Now he's able to see them, to love on them, to be around them. But I learned through witnessing, once he did receive the visitation, the overnight visitation, that all the things he had talked about when we were dating, about how he misses kids, he just wants to be with his kids, that's exactly what it was. He just wanted to be with them. He wanted access, but he didn't want the responsibility. So I just had a baby, and as soon as we start getting visitation, so that's a lot of stress on me, especially as a new mom and trying to navigate this. And I felt like a new single mother that was married. And if you don't know what that feels like, it means you have to do wifely duties as far as taking care of the household, taking care of the husband in whatever capacity that looks like, and taking care of the baby without getting help from the husband. And I had the responsibility of trying to take care of his two kids and my newborn. And so when I got into that situation where I was about to call, I was like, wow, I don't want to send him back to jail. Even though it was his actions. It's not like it was my responsibility to take on the burden of his actions or to protect him from the consequences of his own actions. But that's what I was doing, because not only was I thinking about him going back to jail and that not being good for him, which you did it, so be gone. But I was thinking about his kids that he had just gotten reconnected to, and now they're old enough to understand that if daddy goes to jail, they know what that means. So now his kids are looking at him in a negative light. And to me, it felt like it would have been my fault, even though it wasn't my actions that would have got him there. It was the consequences of his own actions. I didn't want to grow up raising a son without his father in his life, because there are so many Black kids that don't have their dads in their life. And I didn't want to contribute to that. But here's the warped view of it all. I was operating under the mindset that having a two-parent household is better than a single-parent household, because that's what I believed. I grew up with a two-parent household. Not saying that I'm better than anybody, but saying that having that stability from a mother and a father is really, really vital and important. But the key word is stability. And when you're in an abusive relationship, whether it be physical, emotional, power and control, psychological, that stability for that kid is not there. And what's happening is you're setting a bad example for that child or those children of what love is, or what a relationship should be like, or how a man should treat a woman, or how a woman should be treated by a man. And I was thinking about that, and I put so much pressure on myself, because I didn't think that his family knew what type of person he really was, the character that he had. He didn't have any friends, so it's not like they were going to be there to talk to him about anything. He didn't listen to anybody. And so I was sitting there wanting to call for my own safety and thinking about how everyone else would feel except for myself. And it came to a point where it's like my life wasn't more important to me than the impact of his absence would be on the lives of the people who loved him or he claimed to love. So I didn't call. I never called the police. Of all the situations that we have been in, of all of the threats, of all of the manipulation, of all of the power and control, he was a lot of intimidation factors he would do. Like if he was upset at me about something, if he's walking down the hallway and I'm walking down the hallway behind him to go somewhere else, not to follow him, not to nag him, because I knew not to do that or I would make things worse, but to go somewhere else. It's a specific incident. He was walking to the office and I was going to go to the laundry room, which both are down the same hallway. So he's walking and I'm walking behind him. So he turns around and he holds up a fist and he flinches at me like he's going to hit me. He's like, you got to let me know that you're here. We're the only two grown people in this house. The baby can't walk and your kids aren't here right now. And so he would do things like that as an excuse to just really be intimidating. He was a big guy. He not too big, but big enough, you know what I'm saying? I'm a woman and I'm 100-something pounds and he's this way pushing 200-something pounds. So it was just a lot of buffoonery and foolishness. And I should have been gone a long time ago, but I stayed, I stuck it out because I was ashamed. I'd been married before and I felt like I left that marriage prematurely. I don't believe I should have been in the first place, but I was married to a really good friend. Like he was a really good friend. It was just things about his life that weren't that great. And I wasn't mature enough and he wasn't mature enough for us to navigate through healing and working and growing together and even having healthy conversations about certain stuff. So I left. So now I have this divorce on my record. Now I'm married again. And I'm like, man, I don't want to be divorced again. All of these busted reasons for staying in an abusive relationship. I said, I don't want to be divorced again. And I held the shame and the guilt and the regret of being in that marriage and leaving that marriage without trying. I let that force me stay in a marriage that I never should have been in again. And that definitely wasn't worth trying for. So I stayed for, 3 years dealing with his aggression, his anger issues, his abuse, his manipulation, his narcissism, his gaslighting, all of these things, his lying, because I was like, I at least need to try. I felt convicted by the Bible. I felt convicted by him. I just felt convicted. And I'm like, oh, I got to try. It is never your job to try to stay in something that is unhealthy for you. Your job is to keep yourself safe and protected. And if you're a mother, your job is to keep your children safe and protected. And there's no way that being in an abusive relationship or marriage is going to keep your children safe or protected. Even if you think that they don't know what's going on, they are very aware. They are very alert. They pick up on a lot of things. And thinking that you're staying for the sake of your children, that's a jacked up mindset to have. And I was there. I had that mindset. And I was blessed enough to have the strength and the courage and the sense enough to leave when they were so young that now they think, unfortunately, that this is how life is supposed to be. They sometimes see their dad. They sometimes FaceTime and have him on FaceTime. And it's unfortunate, but it's the consequences of my actions, right? Being with someone that the signs were there. The signs were there. Being with someone who just didn't appreciate me, didn't appreciate life. The Bible says that a husband is supposed to love his wife as himself. The problem with that is if the man doesn't love himself, he won't be able to love his wife correctly. And in my situation, he didn't love himself. I could see it the way he treated himself, drinking, alcohol, becoming like like really heavy drinkers, smoking, just all kinds of like just unhealthy behaviors and habits, holding back and not being able to talk about the trauma that he experienced in his past, holding on to that. So that's eating away at him privately. He didn't love himself. And so he was never going to be able to love me correctly. And what happens is I became the way that he could release some of that stress and that anger. I'm in Facebook groups and I'm looking at women who are still in situations and they don't understand why they still love somebody, why they still care for that person who's clearly showing them that they don't care about you. They don't love you because that's not what love is. That's not what someone who cares does. You have a trauma bond with that person. And you have, if I can speak for myself, I had hope. Like, I know that God created him for something great, but he allowed the demons to take over. He allowed the demons to win. And I was holding on to the hope that maybe he would come out of that and that he would become the man that God created him to be, that he would have an impact on the world that God created him to have an impact on. But no one should stay in a relationship simply because you hope that someone is going to change for the better, especially when their current state of being is causing harm to you. So I'm on the national hotline for abuse, and it defines domestic violence abuse, also referred to as intimate partner abuse, as a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. Anyone can be a victim or a perpetrator. This can be physical harm, intimidation, manipulation, and control. I experienced all of that, all of it. It can happen through physical violence, through threats, from emotional abuse, financial control. Again, I experienced all of it. And like, it was just every aspect of my life he wanted to have control over. He wanted to make me fear him and think that I respected him when I didn't. And he would ask me, and I would tell him, yeah, I respect you, or I would keep my mouth shut. But deep down inside, I don't have respect for anyone who have the audacity to put their hands on me in an unloving way. So abuse happens in many forms. It doesn't just have to be physical. I was communicating with a young lady on Instagram, and she was trying to decide if she wanted to stay with her husband. They had a young son. I wasn't giving her advice to leave him. I was just telling her about my experiences and how the things that she was telling me sounded really familiar. And she said, well, he's never really physically abused me. He did put his hand on my throat and push me up against the wall one time, but that was about it. A lot of us don't really comprehend that that is physical abuse because there's no evidence of it. You don't have any bruises, you don't have any scars, you don't have any broken skin, you're not bleeding, no broken bones. But I read a statistic that said anybody who can put their hands on your throat, they have a close to 600% chance of killing you, because that's just not an act that a human being in their right state of mind would do to another human being without the intent of causing them physical harm. Even if it's just intimidation, even if it hasn't happened in months or years, the fact that it happened once lets you know that it can happen again, and it could be very, very worse than how it happened the first time. My hope is that this podcast reaches all the people that it's meant to reach, family members of people who are currently going through abusive relationships, so that you can understand that it's not just your child, it's not just your niece, just your friend. This happens to a lot of people, more women than, but also to understand that if you want to help, it's important that you help from love and not judgment. You know that they shouldn't be in that situation, but yelling at them about it or condemning them or making them feel smaller. I had a guest on the show not long ago who was saying that finally did tell what was because they made her feel so bad about staying, she left. Like, the place that I thought was safe for me to come is not safe. So where do I go? and she went back for a time, but thankfully she did get out. I hope this podcast reaches people who have been in abusive relationships and haven't shared their story, who are still feeling like they're living in shame. Because that was me when I left. I didn't tell a lot of my friends and family for a year that I had left. They thought I still lived with him. I thought I still lived with out in a different city. And I had moved back in with my dad, with me and my kids. There was so much shame and embarrassment because it's like, wow, you really let yourself go through this and you stayed and you defended him. And I didn't defend him to other people per se, but the act of staying and not calling the police, that's defending him. That's protecting him from his own consequences. I hope that this podcast reaches anyone who is still in an abusive relationship, to let you know that this is not the end of the story. It is better for you. You don't know it yet because you're afraid of what's on the other side because it's unknown. But let me tell you something, whether it's a good unknown or a bad unknown in life, whether it's domestic violence, starting a new job, stepping out as an entrepreneur, writing a book, becoming a parent, you're afraid because it's unfamiliar territory. But it doesn't mean it's not going to be better. And anything on the other side of abuse, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it is going to be better. I left on Christmas Eve, 2022. It is now July 2025, and I still live with my father and my 3 kids. I'm still trying to figure out how my life is supposed to look. I'm still trying to put the pieces back together, and I'm blessed beyond measure to have the support system that I have, to have people that I can lean on in this time, in this season. But I know that it is better for me and better for my children, and that the future is brighter every single day as long as I keep showing up and I keep putting one foot in front of the other and I keep putting myself out there to receive what God has for me. So my encouragement is for anyone who has been in a situation, is familiar with the situation, who's unfamiliar with it, who's suspecting. I just want to encourage people. I want this podcast to be a place where individuals feel empowered to share their story. There have been so many women on this show who have come on, and this is the first time that they've gone public with what they've experienced. And after the call, they share with me that, and then they share that they feel that the podcast and doing their episode has helped them further on their healing journey. Because someone who's in an abusive relationship is in an abusive relationship and they're suffering in silence. They don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have anybody to share what they're going through with. And they're suffering physically, mentally, emotionally by themselves. And to have the strength and the power to step up and free yourself from the burden that you've been carrying, that's what this show is all about. It's about educating, it's about empowering, and it's about encouragement. And I just want to thank everyone who has been tuning in and showing up with me every week. This has been a privilege and an honor. We will definitely be back next Thursday with a new guest for you guys. I love you guys as always. And you guys know what I'm going to say. We got to keep showing up. We got to keep sharing our love. We got to keep shining our light. In the meantime, in between time, we go pew, 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 pew.